Thank you, and hello everybody. Before I start, just to explain, I'm actually here in place of Roger White today, who sadly had to attend a funeral. So he had prepared and suggested this paper, but it is about a project that I've been working with Roger on over the last couple of years. But they are Roger's slides, so I have only had a quick look through them, so if I have a bit of a look of surprise on my face at the next slide that comes up, then don't be alarmed. I do know the project quite well, so hopefully I'll be able to just talk you through them as he would. I'm not a Roman specialist or a fine specialist particularly. I'm much more I work for the National Trust and I cover sites of all periods and mostly focus on sort of landscape archaeology and nature recovery. But we have recently been working on this project at Roxeter, so I've had to home in on the Roman period. So Roger and I have been working for the last couple of years at Attingham Park, which is a site just outside Shrewsbury. It's 1,000 hectares. It takes in the main sort of central portion of the mansion property in Parkland, but it's over 1,000 hectares of tenanted farmland that the National Trust looks after. It also takes in the northern third of Roxeter Roman City. So the National Trust do own the northern part of the Roxeter Roman City and the land around. So we've been doing a lot of work at Attingham recently, looking at a diversification of land use. We've been looking at where to plant trees, whether we can take some land out of farmland and that kind of thing. So we've been doing a lot of work around that. And given its proximity to Roxeter, given the really significant archaeology that we have always presumed was on the site, a couple of years ago, and you may have read about it, we did a magnetometry survey of 1,000 hectares of farmland across Attingham. It was a huge survey. It took quite a long time, and we found, and it was very, very, we found exactly what we expected in a site immediately in the hinterland of Roxeter, Roman City. We found something like, I think, 61 new sites and improved our knowledge of 90 sites. So it's really sort of prolific in terms of the archaeology. It's a subject of an entirely different lecture. We're going to think about the metal detecting survey that we did as a result of that project, is what Roger was going to focus on today. After we'd done the survey, we realised that we had some really, really significant sites. We knew we were going to go public with the results of the survey. They're all fully integrated into the HER. And we also knew that Roxeter is a very high-risk area for night hawking and illegal metal detecting, with lots and lots of reports of night hawking on the scheduled monument itself, but certainly in the area around. So we were concerned that some of the sites that we had discovered, I think we had 2 sites that we assumed are Roman villas, at least 3 other areas of Roman settlement, a cemetery site, and sites that were focusing along the Roman road. So we decided, and I think it was 2024, the back end of 2024, early 2025, to work with, hopefully we've just got a picture. So we worked with a local metal detecting team called Newport History Society, who we worked with before actually at the National Trust. They're a really responsible metal detecting group. They run their own little museum in Newport that they curate themselves, so they don't sell and pass on their finds. They keep them and they display them in Newport, so we knew that they were a reliable group. We linked in with the PAS and we developed a methodology to sort of carry out a systematic metal detecting survey of 6 sites that we were chosen. And we were on site ourselves, so these guys came down to site every day, walked up and down the fields, and they were picking their finds, bagging them and leaving them on site in bags, and we were following and recording them with a GPS logger. So we've got all the data and all the points of where everything was found. And they also kept their own tracer plots. Oh, there you go, that would have been useful. So this is just a site example of the outline of Attingham Park. You can see you've got Shrewsbury just up to the top left-hand corner. So it's a huge swathe of land to the south of Shrewsbury. You've got Attingham, Hall and Parkland in the centre, and then you can see this here actually. Can I see that? You've got Roxeter Roman City here, and these were the 6 sites we selected for the metal detecting survey. Field 1 we identified a cemetery on the road leading north out of the town. It had long been assumed that was the location of the cemetery, but confirmed by our geophysical survey that it was. Sites 2 and 3 were sites we thought were villa sites on the roads leading west out of the city. 4, we had a clear trace of the Roman road leading west, and then we had sites in Iron Age, Romano British farmstead, and a really interesting little site up at number 6, which we think possibly represents some kind of market garden from dating to the Roman period. So these are just some of the results. We've got field 1 here, and you can see, as you might expect, we had a real density of finds coming up from field 1. With these green dots are overlaid onto the geophysics, so you can see the intensity of the finds that correspond exactly with where we're picking up all the features on the geophysics. And again, field 6, we think, no, hang on, I've got those mixed up. Field 3 had clearly been detected before, and the metal detectorists picked that up immediately, and they were like, there's no rubbish here, there's hardly anything left, this site has been gone over before, and we found that in a number of sites. We think field 6 hadn't been, so we got a very strong kind of differentiation really in fields that we think had been detected before, and the detectorists were really useful on site, giving us clues to sort of to understanding that previous detections really. So these 2 tables that we've got here just show the Roman finds in the first one. So you can see field 1, which is the cemetery site, 57 coins, 8 brooches, and 104 other finds. And you can see they're real strong, and a lot of pottery that was being picked up. And I thought it was really interesting listening to Teresa earlier in terms of the categories of finds and things, because actually it's really similar to what we saw in this process. Really, lots and lots of brooches, loads of trumpet brooches, lots of coins, dress fittings, that kind of thing. And then by period, again, really interesting, and as you would expect, I think, but quite stark as well, that actually almost everything we picked up was Roman. There was very little medieval and post-medieval finds that the detectorists picked up. Star finds. So these are some really lovely pieces coming up actually. A lot of them from field 1 where the cemetery was, and from field 6 again. I think it's a shame the 2 villa sites, fields 2 and 3, had obviously been detected before, and we got very, very little from those areas. And it's worth saying that there was no understanding that those sites were villas previously. There was no crop marks in some areas. We were confirming things that had been picked up from crop marks, but those sites were sort of new sites, as it were, from the geophysics, which I thought was quite interesting. And these are some of the star finds, as Roger calls them, and I've brought some of them along, so some of you have been up and had a look at these in the break, actually. We've got the lovely little key ring, the little finger ring, and this is a really nice example of one of the large trumpet brooches, which again we did get quite a lot of, and this nice beaded torque fragment as well, and some parallels. I think this beaded torque parallel that Roger's picked up is always exactly the same, if you've seen it here, as the one that we found. And these pomblate heads, I didn't pick up on that, examples of where they've been found elsewhere. So Roger has done the finds assessment and is pulling together all the details on the finds. So this kind of represents his state of where he's up to at the moment, the report that he's producing for us. So some of Roger's observations here. I mean, you can read them. As I've said before, I think fields 2 and 3, which is where we think the villas were, had obviously been detected before, and we think, based on what we were getting in other areas, that the loss from that process is at least 75%, if not more, of the finds that will have been there that had been lost. Again, you can see the similarities, fields 1, 4, 5 and 6, much higher number of finds per hectare. Interestingly, I mean, field 1 is right next to the ramparts of the Roman city. 4, 5 and 6 are further out, although they are still known settlement sites. But I think Roger thought that really corresponded with the work done as part of the Roxton to Hinterland project, which saw that drop in material culture. The further you got away from the city, the less sort of density of finds. And again, the pottery, I think, was similar to the results that were coming through from the Roxton to Hinterland project as well. And again, we've got lots of the dress fittings and that engagement with fashions and brooch use. And I've already mentioned the lack of post-Roman finds, which I think we all thought was quite interesting because there are known medieval sites across the estate, really. And then just a bit of an add-on as well. So on the back of the geophysical survey, we decided to undertake an excavation this year, so just September last year, actually, and it was part of a community sort of participatory project, which was, we were looking at really trying to understand the geophysics and the accuracy. We're using the geophysics results to base a lot of decisions around at Attingham, where we're going to plant our trees, what's really there in the ground. So we had the opportunity to do some excavation, and we chose to look at a site that was immediately outside of the ramparts, just immediately outside the city walls, just outside the scheduled area, in an area that the geophysics looked like there were enclosures, there's a trackway, a shrine, so we thought it was a really good area to look at. And we did some controlled metal detecting on this site as well, which again brought up some of our best signs. This is a picture of the metal detectorists unit. We used a chap who is a veteran who'd been through some of the Operation Nightingale processes, excavations, and is now real keen sort of dedicated detectorist, but he's got some really brilliant kit as well, which is great. So he came and stayed with us on site for a couple of weeks. And while the excavations were going on, he was surveying a sort of transect across the field, focusing on the trackways and the roads, which interestingly is where the majority of the finds that he picked up were focused, as well as detecting the spoil heaps and that kind of thing as well. And I think he very much agreed, like some of the other areas, that the field had definitely been detected before, which really wasn't surprising because it is immediately adjacent to the scheduled monument, and we know we get regular reports of illegal night hawking in the area. Again, some of the star finds from that excavation actually were the metal finds that were found by the detectorist. And again, I've brought some of them along today, and I've had a chat to a few of you about what they could be. So we've got the kind of possible, the helmet handle, or handle as we're now calling it on advice, and the military belt buckles, and the kind of Republican denarius that we've picked up as well, which is of particular interest, as it predates the kind of settlement of the area by quite a lot. And then other finds, again, things that I've brought along today, steelyard weight, fairly sort of typical finds, this possible bracelet, and this, which we were wondering if was a possible rolled lead curse. So we're going to be looking at that in a bit more detail coming up. We also, lots of other finds from the excavation as well, as you might expect, all pretty much dating to the 1st and 2nd centuries. Has he got anything about the excavation here? Yes, he has. Oh, I don't know how to go back now, sorry. But they were on the front as well, so a candlestick, which is a really nice little piece, and the remains of a incense bowl, which we found in the centre of the shrine. Here we go, which is the shrine here. So he's just put up a couple of images, I think, of the excavations. So like I say, we focused on one trench, looked at what we thought was a little rural shrine, so a little sort of square enclosure around a central pit. And it was really interesting for a number of reasons, but it correlated almost exactly with what we'd picked up on the geophysics, which was brilliant. We can see this little square enclosure pit in the centre, out of which we got the incense bowl, and then scattered cremations around the shrine, very similar to a couple of other little shrines that have been excavated recently as part of a pipeline scheme really close by. Trench 3, Trench 2. Trench 2 we positioned over a circular feature which we were hoping would be a roundhouse, and some other sort of field boundary features. We were also hoping to pick up the remains of the possible Ditchford military camp, which has been picked up over the years as crop mark evidence. One of the very few things that didn't show up when we did the geophysics, but we didn't pick it up. We didn't have time to extend the trench that far. So we were hoping to determine it, because we feel like that was quite an interesting feature that's either been lost due to ploughing or not detected in the geophysics. We did pick up in Trench 2 a two-phase roundhouse feature, and about a quarter of the roundhouse was identified, and we did get this lovely bit of sort of in situ preserved daub, so obviously been burnt, and the daub had been preserved in situ, which was a lovely feature. And it was actually just here that the little bracelet came out, actually, of the roundhouse feature. I think I'm coming to the end. I'm not sure. I should have checked how many slides there were. Is that about right? Yeah, he hasn't put Trench 1 in. It's fine. So yeah, just in summary, really, the results of the metal detecting survey, and I think that's what Roger was really keen to talk about, just how useful that metal detecting survey was, and it's really helped us understand lots of things about the landscape, but also just how significant the night hawking threat really is, and what has been lost over the years around Wroxeter. And as Roger says, it is a one-off response. We knew those sites were there. Those sites, it's also worth saying, have been farmland. The majority of them are all under the plough and have been for at least the last 50 years, and are being consistently degraded. Although as a result of this work, we're going to take most of those sites are going to be coming out of arable and going to grassland. But again, it just shows the presence of those artefacts in the plough soil is just evidence of the destruction, the ongoing erosion of those sites that have been under the plough. And really, it's just been a really great. The project is still ongoing. It's had lots of multi-stranded project, really, but it's a really good example of cooperation with the local community, working with those local community groups, working with the metal detectorist groups who are, they're really on side. They come in, we have talks with them, we go to site and give them lectures and things, and they're very, very keen and very engaged with the project. But the excavation itself worked with lots of community groups as well. So it's been a really successful project, and the National Trust are really, really keen on it. It ticks all our boxes in terms of the project is all designed around nature recovery. It's all designed about changes in land use. It's all focused on that, but yet at the same time we're enabling sort of additional access to National Trust sites. We're enabling people to come in and work with the finds and with the archaeology that wouldn't usually even visit a National Trust property. So it's been a really great example of that kind of coordinated working, and it has resulted in lots of fines. We now have to work out what we're going to do with, but I think there is going to be a display in the mansion at Attingham as part of the Festival of Archaeology this year, as a first step of getting them on display. Lots of National Trust properties are registered museums, so we can hold the archive ourselves, so we may well choose to keep hold of that and look after ourselves and put it on display, which I think, personally, think it would give a really nice angle to the story. You know, you get the stories of the kind of mansion properties and what's going on in the 18th century, the rich people in the 18th century. So I think I'm really, really keen that we get to display some of this stuff about the wider landscape within the houses itself. And I think that's it. Oh no, there's one more. Yeah, can anyone guess what this is? Oh, actually, he's put it on there. I quite often do that as a guess what this is. Yeah, this was really interesting. There was Field 6, which was just to the north, and we found 5 of these features. They're big, like that, and all the detectorists knew immediately that they were tank periscopes. And Roger and I were bewildered by them, but also bewildered by the presence of them. There was a military airfield at Attingham, but it was very much an airfield, and the presence of 5 military tank periscopes was quite confusing. I think that's it. Thank you.
We've got time for a couple of questions if you want.
Yeah.
Thank you, Janine, thank you for stepping in at relatively short notice for Roger to still let us hear about some of the finds from Attingham. We've got time for a couple of questions if anyone has any about the site. No, I think you've stunned them all into silence.
No,
Oh, Barbara, yes.
I'm going to ask possibly you've kind of promoted the use of working with metal detectorists. Do you think that if you put an exhibition in, that it would encourage more people to do things like night hawking, or how would the trust feel about making sure that is controlled?
Yeah, I think we've put a lot of... Oh, sorry to just repeat the question. So it's a question about whether if we sort of exhibit the finds, we're going to be sort of encouraging metal detecting, I suppose. I mean, it is something we've put a lot of thought into, and we didn't sort of just kind of rush into the decision, but I think it's all around the communications and the messages that you're sending out. So there was a lot of comms around the actual survey itself as well, in terms of trying to make people understand that those fields had been detected, why we were doing it, that it was controlled, and if we're sending out that message, and perhaps if we're sending out the message of loss as well, then hopefully we're sort of really highlighting just how much can be lost and what the benefits are of it remaining for to be found in this fashion, hopefully. But yeah, it's something we've definitely given a lot of thought to, and we've worked with, like I say, with the local PAS, but also with the local heritage crime officer a lot over it as well.
Yeah, one more.
You were showing those really interesting plots between the relationship between the geophysics and the metal scented stuff, and in some places there clearly was correlation between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were in the field, like how confident are you that all the stuff you were detecting was in the ploughed soil and that you're not actually moving down into the stratified features?
I think certainly in the ploughed fields that we were walking in, there wasn't any risk of that. Those fields have been really deeply ploughed for, like I say, for any number of years. And then I think once we'd done the excavations and we had an understanding of the depth of the archaeology, then we knew that those finds that were coming out, that were being metal detected, were not at the depth. So as soon as we had an understanding, we realised that within the controlled excavation area they weren't. I'm pretty certain there's no risk of that in the ploughed fields. Some of those ploughed fields were really churned up really deep. They're mostly all potatoes for the last 50 years.